Red light's on. Okay. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. My name is Steve Marshall. I'm speaking as Special Magistrate, serving for the Escambia County Value Adjustment Board. If you'll bear with me a moment, I'll read an opening statement into the record that will introduce the rules, procedures, and guidelines for our hearing this morning. These hearings are conducted by the Escambia County Value Adjustment Board, the purpose of which is to give taxpayers the opportunity to contest the market value of their property for the 2024 tax year. These hearings are public under the Sunshine Law and are conducted in a quasi-judicial manner. My name is Steve Marshall. I've been hired as a special magistrate assigned to hear your case. I do not work for Escambia County as an employee. I was selected by the Escambia County Value Adjustment Board to sit in their stead. The special magistrate's responsibility is to act as a judge to hear cases presented by taxpayers and to hear contradictory arguments presented by the property appraiser's representative. Based upon the evidence presented and on applicable state law, I'll render a decision and make a recommendation to the VAB regarding your petition. It is the policy of the board to require that all persons who testify as to facts be placed under oath, including the property appraiser's representatives. The property appraiser's representative is sworn in at the first hearing and remains under oath the entire day. Each taxpayer will be placed under oath as they individually appear. It is important that taxpayers understand that under the law, special magistrates cannot reduce an assessment unless certain things take place. The property appraiser's assessment is presumed correct if the property appraiser proves by preponderance of the evidence that the assessment was arrived at by complying with Section 193.011 of the Florida statutes. Any other applicable statutory requirements relating to class use values or other assessment caps and professionally accepted appraisal standards, including mass appraisal standards, if applicable. This is a requirement established by Florida law. The presumption of correctness may be lost if the taxpayer shows by the preponderance of the evidence that the property appraiser failed to consider properly the criteria in Florida Statute 193.011, or the taxpayer showed by preponderance of the evidence that the property appraiser's assessment is arbitrarily based on appraisal practices which are different from the appraisal practices generally applied by the property appraiser to comparable property within the same class and within the same county. If the presumption of correctness is lost, the taxpayer has the burden to prove by preponderance of the evidence that the property appraiser's assessment is in excess of just value. If the property appraiser's presumption of correctness is not lost, the taxpayer shall have the burden of proof by proving by preponderance of the evidence that the appraiser's assessment is in excess of just value. The special magistrate has no authority or power to reduce assessments based on any other criteria. For example, I cannot reduce an assessment because the taxpayer finds that it is a hardship to pay taxes. In addition, I am not permitted to reduce an assessment based upon the underassessment of similar property in the same area. Your property must be assessed at greater than fair market value and supported by your evidence in order for the special magistrate to recommend a reduction. If another similar piece of property is underassessed, then the property appraiser's representative will presumably investigate the possibility of increasing the assessment of the other property for the next year. Both the petitioner and the property appraiser will have an opportunity to present competent evidence to establish the value of your property. The evidence you present must show that the values you propose meet the 8 standards of Florida Statute 193.011. If competent and sufficient evidence is presented as to value of the property, I'll decide the value of your property based on the greater weight of evidence. If competent and sufficient evidence is not presented as to the value of the property, the petition will be remanded to the property appraiser for reappraisal. Now, within Florida Statute 193, the 8 criteria, just to make you familiar with them briefly: the present cash value, highest and best use of land, location, quantity or size, cost of the property and present replacement value of any improvements, condition, income, and net proceeds of sale. So this morning, your evidence should be factual, correct, and germane to the valuation. Evidence should be relevant, credible, and authentic. Preponderance of the evidence means the greater weight of the evidence, or more likely than not. Sir, do you have any questions this morning? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, Delaney, would you like to swear everybody in?
So anyone who's going to be giving testimony, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony and evidence you give today will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Fisher, there's a button on your microphone that says speak. When you are speaking, it'll help us get the recording better. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Generally, I like the property appraiser go first, then you'll have every opportunity to present your case, ask questions and the like, and then each side will have a rebuttal and we'll conclude. So that's generally the procedure. So if you don't have any questions, we'll go. Thank you. Okay, gentlemen, ladies.
Good morning. That petition, 2024-39, is West Florida, owned by West Florida Regional Medical Center, Inc. The current business goes by HCA Florida West at this time. The property is located at 8383 North Davis Highway, Pensacola, Florida. Turning to page 2 is our property record cards. This is currently for 2024 what we have is a 6-card account with 6 separate buildings on it. The first is the main hospital. The hospital was built in 1976 and has gone through renovations over the past 45 plus years. The hospital square footage is 412,907 square feet. It is a precast panel type structure, stucco siding. Building 2 is a addition to the main hospital that was constructed in the year 2000. It's approximately 29,760 square feet. This compromises a ICU, a heart area, and then an emergency room area. Building 3 and Building 4 are separate units of the hospital. One is more of a physical therapy type hospital, the other being a rehab treatment type hospital. The square footage of Building 3 is 55,772 square feet, and of Building 4 is 50,176 square feet. Again, these are all precast type structure, stucco veneer, all completely heated and cooled throughout. Building number 5 is actually a small little bank on the property. It's a masonry structure, but it's actually got metal siding, so we're coating it more of an office structure versus a bank improvement status. It's 7,200 square feet. And then building number 6 is just a warehouse. Again, metal siding. It is heated and cooled. It's approximately 2,400 square feet. So based on the overall square footages of the property, my total, not including any canopies or drive-throughs, porches, or anything of that nature, but total square footage, I'm coming up with 552,526 square feet is what we are assessing our value off of.
Let me repeat that, 552,526 square feet of building area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what's the land area? Do you know that offhand?
It's 20.06 acres.
Okay.
So continuing on to Building 8 is a photo of the property, kind of shows the main 7th-floor hospital. And page 9 is the map of the property. This property sits on North Davis Highway, has a common street of Johnson Avenue, and also is covered by University Parkway to the left. So based on the square footage, continuing on to my sales comparison analysis, the sales, I had to go outside of Escambia County. We searched nationwide. So the sales that I ended up finding were actually located in more South Florida. They were, I do want to put out this, that they were part of bulk allocations, but I will further explain that once I go through the analysis. So subject number 1, well, let me go back to the subject first. So the current assessment of the property is $54,462,392. Divided by the 526 square footage, it's being assessed at $98.57 per square foot. And based on what we vetted when we completed an inspection of the property, there were 515 current licensed beds, which comes out to $105,752 per bed. So sale number 1, North Shore Medical, located in Miami-Dade County, is located at 1180 Northwest 95th Street. It compromised several structures with approximately 9 different year-builts. The sale date was July 31st, 2021 for $162 million. We do have a time adjustment study in our packet referencing around 0.75% per month. So with a time adjusted sales price going from the July of 2021 sale comes out to $197,235,000.
What's your monthly time adjustment factor?
0.75 per month. The square footage was 504,970. Again, that's excluding any canopies or porches, and that will be the same for the remaining 3 sales I go through as well. And that was vetted through the property appraiser's office in Miami-Dade and Broward County. Basically, a time-adjusted price per square foot, it sold for $391 a square foot. It's 357 licensed beds currently, so assessed price per bed is $552,479. Continuing on to sale number 2 is Hialeah Hospital, located at 651 East 25th Street. Again, this was a multi-building parcel of approximately 7 to 8 buildings. The sale also occurred July 31st, 2021 for $133,735,300. Again, that same time adjustment of 29 months at 0.75% per month has a time-adjusted sales price of $162,822,728. The property is 529,799 square feet, which comes out to a time-adjusted price per square foot of $307. It's 378 units, which comes out to $430,748 per bed. Sale number 3 is Florida Medical Center, located in Broward County, located at 6000 West Oakland Park Boulevard. Again, this was built in 1972. The sale occurred July 22nd, 2021 for $171 million. Time adjusted 29 months. Comes out to a time adjusted sales price of $208,192,500. The property is 288,330 square feet, which comes out to approximately a time-adjusted price per square foot of $722. It's 459 units, which comes out to $453,578 per unit. Sale number 4, located also in Miami-Dade County, Palmetto General Hospital, located at 2001 West 68th Avenue. Again, is a multi-building account compromising about 7 buildings. The sale also occurred July 31st, 2021 for $315 million. Time adjusted the same 29 months. Comes out to a time adjusted sales price of $383,512,500. The property is 397,732 square feet, which comes out to a price per square foot of time-adjusted price per square foot of $964. The property is 360 units, which comes out to $1,065,313 per bed. So going by this, I estimated a price per square foot of these 4 sales of around $400 a square foot, which would put the value of around $221 million based on the 515 units of the subject property. Or I reconciled at around $450,000 per bed based on the 515 units, puts the value of around $257,500,000. I reconciled the price per square foot and the price per bed at $230,000.
Can you repeat that last comment?
So the reconciled value on the first sales comparison sheet is $230 million.
Now, is that accounting for first and eighth criteria?
No,
No?
not at this number, no.
All right, that's more or less the midway point, so to speak? From 221 to 257?
Yes, of those, right, the per bed and per square foot, yes. So continuing on to the next page, it's basically another sales grid, which is basically the exact same sales information of sale 1 through 4, same subject matter. So what I did was I allocated, if you were to take those sales prices, because we do realize that they were indicative of, they were bulk allocations, as well as they had tangible, intangible, going concern. There were other factors involved with those sales. So this is just a hypothetical. If I were to base 50% toward the real estate of those sales transactions, and the remaining 50% allocated toward non-real estate, tangible, and 10% toward tangible, 40% toward going concern / intangible. So basically, it's the same data up until when you get the price per square foot. Sale number 1, North Shore Medical. Again, I'm just taking 50% of the first chart. Comes in at $196 per square foot. And then 50% of the price per bed comes in at $276,375 per bed.
Wait, let me interrupt you. I'm on the second chart.
Yes.
That talks about your 50% allocation to real estate.
Right.
And 40% to tangible and so forth, but I'm not seeing those calculations you just mentioned.
So
I see $391 a square foot, for instance, on sale 1.
Right. If you were to take that 391 and the number at the end is the reconciled figure at the end is what I'm gearing toward, but the $391, if you were to cut that in half, comes to $196 per square foot. If you were to cut that 391.
All right, you didn't put that on the chart.
It's not on there, no.
Okay. So cell number 1 is $196 a square foot.
$196 per square foot, yes.
All right.
And then if you were to take the dividing that by the 357 beds, so instead of that being $552,479, the value comes to $276,375 per bed.
Okay.
So continuing on to sale number 2, Hialeah Hospital, taking the, continuing down to basically the price per square foot, dividing the $307 per square foot in half comes to $154 per square foot. And taking the per bed, cutting that in half, the $430,748 comes to $215,374. And continuing to sale number 3, Florida Medical Center, taking the $722 per square foot, cutting that in half brings it to $361 per square foot. And taking the $453,578, cutting that in half comes to $226,789 per bed. And then taking sale number 4, Palmetto General Hospital, coming down to the $964 per square foot, 50% would lead to $482. And the price per bed, instead of $1,065,313, would come to $532,656. So taking the range of the price per square foot of $196, $154, $361, and $482, I reconciled at $200, and that is the figure, that is the first line of the second chart, the 50% chart. So reconciling at $200 per square foot based on a 50% real estate allocation brings the property value to $110,505,200. Now taking the bed price per bed of the 4 sales, the $276,375, the $215,374, the $226,789, and the $532,656, I reconciled at $225,000 per bed, which would bring the value to $128,750,000, which is the total value estimate based on a 50% allocation. So reconciling those two numbers together, I reconciled at $115 million based on a 50% real estate allocation of those 4 comparable properties.
Okay.
So our time adjustment study is continued on basically in pages 13 through 16. The property record cards are reflective of the, starting on page 17, it's basically going to be of the 4 comparables, the 9200 Northwest 11th Avenue, the 651 East 25th Street, the one in Broward County, which is at 5000 West Oakland Park Boulevard from Marty Care, and then the 4th one compromising several, it was a multi-parcel sale, but has 3 different addresses. The 2001 West 68th Street is the main address. However, allocated with that sale was 2 additional parcels, which are included on page 21 and 22. Again, those square footages were included in my price per square foot grid on my sales chart. All right. Okay, so continuing on to page 24, the property, just repeating the square footage, 552,526 is the square footage that is basically within the building, excluding any porches, drive-throughs, canopies on the outside. Now again, that is for all 6 of the buildings that we are assessing. So if you were to turn to page 61 of the book, there is a finding rent comps of that size are somewhat of a challenge. However, we had to go out of the area. There was a comp located in Kansas that was approximately 132,100 square feet. That was a hospital located at 2610 North Woodlawn in Wichita, Kansas. Again, it was built in 1973. It has been completely renovated. They leased it with a NOI of $3,173,585. So that comes out to approximately right at $24 a square foot. But again, it's a smaller facility, 132,000. And if you continue on to page 62, what I found out is when these hospitals are leased, they do appear to be triple net leases. Some of the time I'm seeing that they are absolute triple net leases. So coming back to page 24 of my income approach, the $552,526, and I reconciled at because of the size and economies of scale kicking in, at approximately $15 a square foot, comes out to an annual rent of $8,287,890. No matter what property I'm evaluating, I always allocate a 5% vacancy in collection, no matter what, even if the property is 100% occupied. So just for consistency, I allotted the 5% vacancy in collection, leaves me with $7,873,496. So with these being, from what I have seen, triple net or absolute triple net leases, I allocated 5% toward expenses, which leaves a NOI of around $7,479,821. Now, continuing on to page 63, as far as our cap rate data, medical facilities, smaller medical facilities, we're seeing cap rates when they sell with lease backs in the 5 range, mid-5s to 5.9. However, some of those are smaller facilities, less than the subject property of 550,000 square feet. So what we saw in similar properties that were assisted living or nursing home type properties that were possibly 100 or 200,000 square foot facilities, we were seeing some low double digit cap rates. So I allocated, just because I don't feel that, because of the size of this facility and the uniqueness of this facility, that a cap rate in the 5 range would be appropriate for this type of property. So based on that, I allocated an 11 cap rate, which the value comes out to the $7,479,821. Divided by 11 cap rate comes to $67,998,370. So that's I rounded to $68 million and reconciled. That's a price per square foot of $126 per square foot, based on a $15 rent, triple net, with 5% vacancy, 5% expenses, and an 11 cap rate. This property, I know, was built as West Florida Hospital originally, and now HCA has taken over. We were not given any income data as far as a current lease, if there is a lease in place, or any type of P&L statement. We would still be open to looking at any type of actual income if that does exist on this property, but we do not have that. We could not find sales tax data as well on this particular property. So that's why I ran basically what I felt could be typicals for this type facility because I don't have actual data on this facility.
To get from 68 million to the 54,462, is that first and eighth criteria?
No, that's our current assessment, the 54. So no, that is not taking into consideration the first and eighth
All right,
criteria.
so this analysis is actually higher, but it's project-specific, so to speak.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So continuing on to the cost approach. So this particular property, like I said, it's 6 buildings, each with 6 unique buildings, each with their own respective actual year builts and effective ages. I ran a CoreLogic, so our office has always used the CoreLogic Swift Estimator online. We basically pay for that service. I entered the data as I have done all cost approaches for any type of property I've run a cost on, and entered the effective ages that we have on the properties, entered the actual square footage of the property that we're evaluating, and a report date, obviously, as of January 1 of this year. And the local multipliers, that's not something that I override. That's just automatically determined. The 0.87 is based on when I put in that property address and that zip code. So it's not something that I'm adding in addition to. These are coded as the occupancy detail based on starting on page 28. So basically, this starts the six building report. So it is coded as a 331, which is a hospital, which is this property was built as a hospital. It's still in use as a hospital. So that is the most appropriate code. It is a Class A structure with a 12-foot height. I geared on a average quality throughout the entire, all 6 buildings. The components are something that we add in there, and I've always been directed that is how a Marshall & Swift values a building, as far as adding in what the exterior walls are made of. If the property is completely cooled, heated and cooled, is there a sprinkler system? Is there a fire alarm system? And again, the site improvements are basically just taking our extra feature value, which would basically be any asphalt or paving or concrete walkways or light fixtures. So based on page 28, this is a hospital, the 412,907 square feet, has an effective age of 39 years. Exterior walls are precast type panels. It is complete HVAC throughout. Does have a fire alarm, does have a sprinkler system. And the site improvements are included only for building 1 because you only need to include them one time per account. Our value of the site improvements is $341,790. So adding section 2, which is basically the ICU/emergency room addition that was constructed in the year 2000. That property is 24, as we already mentioned, that building's 24,880 square feet. Again, Class A type structure because it is hospital related, average quality, standard 12-foot height. Again, I'm adding in what the exterior walls are made of, the complete HVAC, it's got an alarm system, it's got a sprinkler system. Continuing on to section 3, which is on about halfway down page 29. And again, the actual and effective age has not changed on building 2. I didn't repeat that. So it was built in 2000, and the actual and effective age is still 2000. The main hospital effective age has been bumped to 1985, up from the original year built. So that's where we're coming at. That we've been valuing it based off of a 39-year effective age.
What's the total economic life under CoreLogic?
Well, I don't have a printout of what they say the economic life would be. of a hospital.
I beg your pardon?
I don't have a printout of what the economic life would be on a hospital.
Do you know your total depreciation?
Well, toward the end, when we get to page 31, is 63% depreciation.
All right, just for the sake of time, show me where that is on page.
Page 30, okay, so 31, let's see, when it talks about less depreciation, it's going to be the first column under units.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So building 3, building 4, again, they are, the other 2 hospitals is going to be the physical therapy hospital and then the mental hospital. Again, they're all precast panels, complete HVAC, alarm system, sprinkler system, average quality. We have an effective age of 34 years on section 3. And then continuing on to page 30, talks about section 4. We have an effective age of 24 years on that 3rd hospital that sits on the property. Section 5 is that bank that sits on the property of 7,200 square feet. We have an effective age of 24 years on that building. And that is not a precast panel. That's just a metal stud, so that receives less value than, allocating precast panel toward everything. So that's reflective at the bottom of page 30. And then continuing on to, it is completely heated and cooled with an alarm type system and sprinkler. And then building 6, being just a warehouse type building, again, exterior wall is metal studs. I did not allocate anything towards fire sprinkler or alarm because I truly do not know if it has it or not. But it is heated and cooled, has complete HVAC. So coming out to going over to page 31, the total depreciated cost of all 6 structures based on the effective ages comes out to $63,286,250. Total cost depreciated is $63,286,258. So, let's see, I just want to make sure, I lost my line here. Okay, so adding in the site improvements of our value of $341,790 comes out to $63,628,048.
Now, that's just the building and site improvements that you have not added back in the land?
Yes, that's correct. So turning to page 26, going back to the first section of the cost approach, is our land allocation and our land grid. I'm going to let so the reconciled opinion of land is 3.5 million. So adding back in to the $63,628,048, the $3.5 million land value is the value based on the cost approach is coming in at $67,128,048. And that's indicative of the $3.5 million toward the land, the $341,790 toward our site improvements, and the 63% depreciated value of the $63,286,528.
All right, anything else?
So continuing on, and again, just the page 32 is basically just the certification stating that this truly was from Swift Estimator, which is basically licensed for under Marshall and Swift, to show that we didn't, this data is data that part of Marshall and Swift service. But continuing on page 33, and that continues on through page 60. So I went back 20 years, did not go farther than Hurricane Ivan, which hit in 2004. And I looked for building permits associated with West Florida Hospital that were indicative of only $250,000 or more. So based on this, and again, I can go through all the numbers, but the total adds up to, and again, this is excluding any permits that would have been under $250,000, excluding any plumbing permits, HVAC, electrical permits, but based on renovations and alterations to the hospital in 20 years, the value I came up with, and all of this is in here if we wanted to add it up, it's $50,655,702. And that's, again, that's only since 2004.
And you said that excludes air conditioning and what else?
That would exclude mechanical permits, so HVAC, plumbing, or electrical. So that's indicative of only alteration and/or addition type permits. Interior and exterior. So just kind of before we get to the salient facts in my summary, starting on page 65, there was a hospital, a local hospital that sold down in Miami-Dade as well. It was I didn't include it as a sales comp because it was a very fresh sale, but just to show that these are selling from time to time. It was a current sale that was 79 beds, sold for $37 million, which comes up to around $468,000 per bed. Again, that's just a support article. But turning back to the salient facts page on page 1. So basically we have a cost approach including site value minus 63% depreciated value of $67,128,048. Again, this is on page 1 of of my booklet. Sales comparison approach, allocating 50% toward real estate, the remaining 50% toward tangible, intangible, and going concern. I have an allocated value of $115 million. Income approach, based on a $15 per square foot triple net with 5% vacancy, 5% toward expenses, and based on the square footage and capping that at a double-digit cap rate of 11, I rounded to $68 million. So that being said, I reconciled at a value of $76 million for this particular property. And our current value is $54,462,392.
Your sales comparison approach is so skewed so high compared to the cost and income. Can you account for that disparity?
And the reason why is these sales from the articles that I don't know if these were,
Sure.
Make sure it's picking it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if these were leaseback type transactions. They are, from what I was told, they were bulk purchases. So they were all semi-related. But I can only assume the reason that was reflective of why these sales prices are so high is because they were possibly leaseback type transactions. So that's why I geared toward less weight toward the sales comparison approach, and more my emphasis toward, majority toward the cost approach. And, but obviously wanted to consider income as well, because these things, I mean, they are leasing at some dollar figure.
All right, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to the petitioner, and you'll have one chance for rebuttal, and we'll have the petitioner have the last word at the end of the day. But right now, the floor is yours, sir.
Mr. Fisher, do you have any evidence you'd like me to provide to Mr. Marshall and the property appraiser's office?
Yeah, I thought it was already printed out and distributed. Is that not correct?
So normally you bring 2 copies to the hearing.
Okay.
And if you have a copy, I can go make a couple copies if I, that's no problem.
Yeah, I apologize. I wasn't prepared to do that. I thought it was,
You are totally fine.
it's going to have a lot of my notes on it.
Delana,
but
should we
I guess
just
that's
take a
fine.
break while you do that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, we'll go off the record for a few minutes while copies
Are you okay
are
with
made
yours
for the
being here?
benefit
Yeah.
of the
See if you have a
petitioner.
clear copy.
Yeah, if they have a clear copy like the
Do
one
you-
I uploaded,
do you guys have a
that
clear
would
copy
be
of the
helpful.
Okay, let me see.
Okay,
I'm gonna
thank
borrow
you.
yours, that way we don't have your.
Apologize. That's my bad. Should have.
I'm gonna pause the record to make a couple copies and I'll be right back.
Okay, it's 10:54 a.m. and, 11:54 a.m. And we're ready to go back on the record, and we're going to turn the floor over to the petitioner for your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Sounds like this is on. Can you all hear me? Yeah, okay. All right, so I'm going to just walk you through the evidence that I submitted. And starting on page 2, all the page numbers are on the lower right corner of the page. So I'll be referring to those from time to time. So just on the cover sheet, the current value on the property is about $54.5 million. And the indicated value that we came up with was about $41.1 million. If we could just turn to the second page. So the property description, I have no issue with the way it was presented by the appraiser. Essentially, this is a hospital. Kind of if you look to the middle of the page, we're using a square footage of 561,315, and I'll kind of detail how we got that. The land acreage is about 20.5, total licensed beds of 515. The original year of construction for the hospital was 1976, and the square feet per licensed bed comes to 1,090. I would direct your attention to this box just below that says weighted age calculation. This is pretty important for a lot of the analysis that's going to follow. So just like the appraiser said, this hospital facility is comprised of 6 different buildings. There's the original hospital, which has the largest square footage, and then there's all these additions that came after 1976. And what this box details for every building component is the year of construction, YOC, which is the original date, and then the effective age. And we actually pulled the effective age directly from the property appraiser on their property record cards. And for, I think all of the building components, all of the different buildings, the effective age is actually newer than the original year of construction. And then we have at the column that's titled
Can you repeat-
SF.
Sir, can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure.
This is important. I want to get this right. You're saying the property appraiser's effective age is newer than the actual age?
Yes, sir. And that essentially just has to do with renovations to the different buildings. So when we're thinking about what the effective age is for every one of these buildings, we feel that they're actually newer than the year of construction, the original year of construction.
Okay.
So the effective age is very important for essentially depreciation calculation, which plays into the cost approach. So then we have square footage for each building. And again, we pulled this directly from the property record cards. It's the total square feet for each building. And then what we came up with here is a weighted age based on taking this title where it says weighted age. That's based on the year of construction, but then weighing it by the square footage of each building relative to the total square footage. So for example, the original hospital makes up 74% of the total square footage of everything. So we're coming up with a weighted age based on the year of construction. And then the final column there where it says effective age, that's actually the weighted effective age, again, taking into consideration the effective age of each building and then weighing it by the percentage that building makes up of the total square footage. So when you look at this in total, the year of construction weighted would be 45.1. That's the chronological age of how old all the buildings are. And the weighted effective age is 36.3. So again, that's not looking at the year of construction, that's looking at the effective age, 36.3. Okay, so if we go to page 3, this is for the cost approach, and it's looking at the land value. The current land value is $3,029,600, and we pulled 3 different sales comps, but we agree that the current value of the land is reasonable. We don't have any dispute over that value of $3,029,600. If you go to page 4, this is a map which shows where the subject is. That's labeled S. And then 1, 2, and 3 are the sales comps. That's the location of those. If we can go to page 5. So basically, to do a cost approach, there's 2 steps. You have to come up with a replacement cost new and then depreciation. So at the first part on page 5 is how we came up with a replacement cost new. We basically use Marshall Valuation Service. And this hospital, this facility is a Class A facility. That is essentially a reference to it being a fireproof steel structure. And the quality of the construction is considered to be average. I believe that we're in agreement with the appraiser on those classifications, so I don't think there's an issue there. So if you move to where it says 1, Marshall and Swift, kind of in the middle of the page, class of construction is an A, quality ranking is average, and then it has the date, which is a reference to Marshall and Swift, and the section in the page. And then we go down to the base cost per square foot, which is $430. And I'll reference the backup documentation later, but just want to tell you the base cost per square foot is $430. And it's not included here, but if you go to Marshall and Swift, and this is basically section 1, page 3, that base cost per square foot includes completely finished buildings. That's what Marshall and Swift is including in that, just as a note. Then we made dollar adjustments to that base cost per square foot. So there's an add-on per square foot for sprinkler systems of $287, and I'll show you the backup for that in a minute. Then there's a climate adjustment, which is really an HVAC adjustment, and I'll show you where I got that. That's negative $9.50 per square foot. We add a adjustment for site improvements of $10 a square foot, and that gets us to an adjusted cost per square foot of $433.37. And then there's other factor adjustments that we apply that are appropriate. There's a current cost multiplier, a local cost multiplier, which is based on a Pensacola location. And if you apply those, you get to an adjusted base cost per square foot of $380.80. So that's how we got that. So that's replacement cost new, $380. Is what we rounded it to. And then the next factor would be depreciation. And this is just a note here from the Appraisal of Real Estate, 12th edition, page 383 is the footnote. But it's basically just saying that there's several methods you can use for depreciation. Each one should give you roughly the same value as long as they're applied consistently and logically. So if we go to the next page, page 6, We're using a modified age-life method for depreciation. The weighted chronological age of the subject improvements is 45 years. And that's just a reference to essentially page 2 of my evidence here, where I show you how we got that 45 years. And then the other factor here is our inspection of the subject improvements indicates that the weighted chronological age is greater than the effective age of the facility due to expansions and upgrades. And we've estimated an effective age of 36 years, which again is on page 2, but really is also taken from the property record card. So on the property record card, there are references to the effective age of the different buildings, and we're really just deferring to that. I would also point out in preparation for the hearing today, and quite frankly, just because the owner expects it, there was a whole team of people from my firm that did go to inspect the property. We did it in late August. We met with the Director of Facilities Management. So that also is just something that we could feel comfortable in using that 36 years of effective age after touring the property and stuff like that. There's just a quick note here on page 6 that for its age, the facility was in average condition at the time of inspection, and we didn't see any atypical items of deferred maintenance that would change that. Okay, page 7. So this is how we came out with the indicated cost value. We have a total replacement cost new of $380 per square foot. We multiplied that by the total square footage to get a replacement cost of $213,299,700. And then we basically applied appreciation. So if there's an effective age of 36 years and you divide that by a 45-year life, that gets you 80% depreciation. And the 45-year useful life, I will show you, but that's in page 12 of the evidence packet here. It's taken from Marshall and Swift. It's their life expectancy on a hospital that is in average shape, but I'll reference that in a minute. So that gives us a depreciation of $170,639,760. So we take that away from the replacement cost new, and that gets us an indicated depreciated value of the subject of $42,659,940. We added to that the current land value on the roll, which we don't have an issue with, of $3,029,600, which gives us an estimated value via the cost approach of $45,689,540. Now, we've also applied a cost of sale here. Sometimes magistrates will consider that. At this point, sometimes they won't. We also applied a 10% reduction for that. In retrospect, if you did apply that, you could use a higher percentage. And I'm only saying that because it's my understanding, looking at that DR 493 form, that this county actually is applying a 15% adjustment. But whether or not we consider that in this approach to value, we would still have an estimated value via the cost approach of $45,689,540, which is lower than the current value on the property. If you could turn the page to page 8, everything in our evidence report from here in is just backup information. Backup information to things that I've already presented. So page 8 right here, all this is showing you is, this is just a page from Marshall and Swift. That's all it is. And it just shows you the cost, which is on the right hand. I know this is a little hard to read, but I'll just go through it quickly. It's $430, which is a base starting level cost per square foot that we then adjusted to. And it also says here that when you use this calculator method, if you look a little bit to the left, it says there's a complete HVAC. So that's the adjustment we're doing. We're considering the HVAC cost. If you turn to page 9, this is just the sprinklers. And then if you would actually go down to the coverage of, we used the adjustment for 500,000 square feet because that's closest to the total square footage of this whole hospital. And there's an adjustment of $2.87. If you go to page 10, this is a current cost multiplier. And we're basically just using the eastern section because that's where we are. That's where Pensacola is. And it's 1.01. Pretty simple. I just want to point this out. Page 11, it's a local multiplier for Pensacola, 0.87 for a Class A building. Page 12, this is kind of important. So Marshall has life expectancy guidelines, and for a Class A average quality general hospital, Marshall is saying the life expectancy is 45 years. So big picture, we're saying this property has an effective age of 36 years. That's your numerator. It has a life expectancy of 45 years. If you do that calculation, you get 80% depreciation. That's the way we're looking at this. Page 13 is, this is basically the complete HVAC calculation. That's how we're doing the HVAC calculation to our replacement cost new per square foot. And then that's pretty much it. Page 14, we're not really applying a height multiplier because you would just apply the base height multiplier, but I just wanted to include it here for correctness. So that essentially is our evidence packet, and thanks for listening.
That's very well presented. Thank you. You want to talk about why you chose only the cost approach and not direct sales comparison or an income approach?
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to look at that. I understand that appraisers look at all three approaches to valuation, and sometimes by law, they need to do that. When you're looking at a hospital, it is my opinion that really the only approach that is a good indicator of the value of the real estate for a hospital is a cost approach. The problem with using a sales comparison approach is that purchase prices in sales indicate going concern value, unless the person buying the hospital is going to demolish it or the hospital is going to go out of business. Most of the time, and if you look at the sales comps that were presented today by the appraiser, those were purchases of hospitals that were going to continue operating. And so those purchase prices include land and real property improvements. They also include personal property that's tangible, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and they also include intangible personal property, in-place workforce, brand value. They may include other things. And so if you start with a purchase price that indicates a going concern value, number one, you would have to adjust that for multiple factors, and those adjustments are speculative. They're very hard to quantify. And so as a result, the sales comparison approach is really not a good indicator of the value of real estate for a hospital. I would also add that often when hospitals are purchased, they are purchased in bulk which was the case for the sales that were presented today by the appraiser. And often they're sale leaseback transactions, which also murkies the water on how good of an indicator those purchase prices are, not just for the real estate, but for the hospital. Because sale leaseback transactions are often financing transactions. And so it's difficult to say to what extent they indicate the value, the fair market value of the real estate. So for that reason, we don't really put any weight on the sales comparison approach. The problem with the income approach is that it's really hard to know what an income approach would be for a hospital. It's hard to quantify what kind of income a hospital would generate and what the expenses would be, and therefore what the NOI would be. In the evidence that was presented by the appraiser, if I remember correctly, there were income comps from Kansas that may or may not really indicate what the income for this property would be. But the fact that you have to go out of the county and out of the state to find income comps indicates how difficult it is to do an income approach on a hospital. So to answer your question, we consider, but we don't put any weight on the sales comparison approach or the income approach because they're not good indicators of the value of the real estate for a hospital.
Okay. Any final words?
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the property appraiser for a short rebuttal, and then you'll have the final closing comment,
Okay.
and we'll keep moving. So any final comments, gentlemen?
Yes, sir. A few things about the cost approach that was provided as evidence by the petitioner. Marshall and Swift CoreLogic allows us to put individual buildings in and get their individual values. Therefore, it seems drastically more accurate than a weighted average to try to catch everybody in one paintbrush. So I would say that we've got buildings that are 20 or 24 years old that, through his analysis, he's giving them a 36-year age. Taking their effective, an office building has a much different life expectancy than a hospital does, but you're using the same escalated depreciation table for all of them off of a hospital's remaining life expectancy. The other variables that each individual stands on its own, added together, is a much more accurate barometer of what the value of each is from a cost approach than an overall weighted average like they used. I would also say, with respect to the sales approach being less accurate, we put less weight on it, but quite frankly, even a 25% allocation for the of land and building on sales costs would put our value well within that. And we just took it half, but I mean, there's those sale prices are indicative of some validity to the property's use and functionality, as well as on the income side approach. The one comp we found, which, like he mentioned, hospital sales rent comps are going to be few and far between, indicated $24 a square foot. We used 15, which is what we see for medical offices in the mid to high teens, just to be conservative on that approach, and used a low single double-digit cap rate, which again is well conservative, using on top of a conservative rent per square foot basis.
Anything else? All right, final word to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to give a final word here. Just, one more note on the sales comparison approach. I think I've kind of made my opinion on that clear. The last thing I would say about it is, if you look at the appraiser's evidence on page 1, their salient facts, as was initially pointed out, the sales comparison indicated value is $115 million, which is an outlier from the other approaches from the appraiser, which are around $68 million. The fact that it's such an outlier and is so much higher, even after adjustments were made, really indicates that it's not an accurate way to look at the land value, that it does not indicate the just value of the land, even using the appraiser's own indicated value and even after adjustments were made. And just to make one last rebuttal on the cost approach, our approach here, as I said earlier, was to take the effective ages on every building that were on the property record cards from the appraiser. And I think that the ages they used were reasonable. So saying that the effective weighted age of all the buildings is 36 years, and then comparing that to the life expectancy for Marshall and Swift of 45 years gets us 80% depreciation. I think that's a reasonable number, and that's what we used. And that leads to our cost indicated value, which I do think is the most reasonable, best supported indicator of the just value of this property. So that will be it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad y'all agree on the land value. This is a challenging property. You've both made some very interesting arguments. I compliment you both on your presentations. You know, my job, I cannot appraise the property. I can only hear the evidence, use my background. I'm a 40-plus year appraiser. I'm an MAI. I'm an AIGRS and so forth. So I've got plenty of experience. One of my clients is the University of Central Florida School of Medicine, so I've done a lot of hospital and healthcare MOB type analysis. So I'm very comfortable with the property type. I think you both made some compelling arguments, several comments. Your cost approach new is much higher than theirs, and I do think it's the difference of them using 6 individual buildings, I think, which is probably a little more accurate. And it's round numbers, $30-something million less. Your cost and analysis was thoughtful, and I understand where you're coming from on your depreciation table, and that was very interesting. I guess the big difference is, at the end of the day, is what's the total accrued depreciation on the property. It's my experience that the Marshall book, the CoreLogic book, I call it Marshall Valuation Service, Marshall and Swift, whatever, it's all three, is light on the economic life. For instance, here in town, the Baptist Hospital served the community well over 75 years, if not longer. I've seen the same thing in Central Florida, where I work and reside. I don't think 45 years is the economic life of these types of properties. There's such substantial construction. It's routine that they're remodeled constantly because of the public service. At the end of the day, 80% depreciation is too much. I'm uncomfortable with the property appraiser's sales comparison analysis. They're too far away. I didn't like adding a 0.75% monthly appreciation factor to sales located in South Florida. I'm not certain that's correct, to use a time adjustment factor from Escambia County to Dade or Broward County. And that skewed the values 20% or so. I did a little calculation, but if you do away with the calculation and you use only the straight sale price, and then use your same 50% allocation to the real estate. Let's see if I can find that. Your lowest price per square foot was still lower than the unadjusted sale. So your sales price, lessing out the time adjustment, is still very strong. The 50% allocation, in my experience, would be reasonable to the real estate, 40% to the tangible, intangible, and 10% FF&E and the like. I think all that is sound, but I'm uncomfortable at the end of the day. That sales comparison approach at $115 million, that's just too high. There's something wrong, and I don't know what it is. Back to the income approach. The petitioner argued that they don't think it's applicable. My experience, I've seen it done routinely. I think the $15 figure for, this is a hodgepodge, let's face it, with the major renovations, $50 million of renovation over 4 to 5 years, over 4 decades. There's just a lot of investment in this property. There's a lot of economic life. It's more than would be indicated. So at the end of the day, I find fault with the petitioner's estimate of 80% depreciation. I like the income approach presented by the property appraiser. I think it's compliant with the statutory criteria applied correctly. I think the cost approach is probably more accurate than the petitioner's, although the petitioner did a good job right up to depreciation, which is really the crux of the argument. So at the end of the day, I'm going to rule the petitioner has failed to overcome the presumption of correctness. I'm going to rule that the property appraiser's estimate of that just market value is reasonable. I'm going to uphold the property appraiser's estimate of just value and deny the petitioner's request for a reduction in value. Sir, I hate to disappoint you, but I have to do what I have to do, and I thought that was very articulate, very thoughtful. But that's just the way it works out at the end of the day. I want to thank you very much for coming in, and safe travels home.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that'll
All right.
conclude the
Thank you, guys.
hearing on petition number 2024-39. Is there any other business to come before us this afternoon? Okay, thank you, ladies. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're off the record. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Hey, okay, thank you for your time, too. All right. Take it easy. Yes, sir.